run of limited face-to-face classes. And K-pop group BTS and British singer-songwriter Ed Sheeran dominate the MTV Europe Music Awards. We'll tell you the highlights. In a surprise move, President Rodrigo Duterte is now running for senator. This negates his communications secretary's disclosure over the weekend, saying Mr. Duterte would run for vice president. Political parties and other aspirants made last-minute changes in plans for the 2022 elections under the substitution option. Our Melissa Lopez has today's developments at the Commission on Elections headquarters in Manila. Melissa, what do we know so far?
Pia, COMELEC's main office was bustling in action earlier today as political parties and party lists availed of the last-minute changes for their lineups for the May 2022 elections. But these proceedings were relatively smoother compared to last Saturday when a crowd of PDP Laban allies and supporters trooped the Intramuros as a show of support to their new presidential bet, Senator Bongo, even though he's running under a different party. Just retired Police Chief Guillermo Eleazar filed as a substitute senatorial candidate of Partido Reforma past 10 in the morning. He asked for Malacanang's blessing, but said he's joining the Lacson Soto slate because Lacson is his idol and was the first to invite him to run next year. Past noon, former National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict spokesperson Antonio Parlade arrived to personally substitute and run as a presidential bet of the Katipunan ng Demokratikong Pilipino. But there are some issues about this. Parlade says he's running to oppose moves in the Senate to defund and abolish the NTF-ELCAC. He adds he cannot support Senator Bongo's presidential bid despite being fellow Duterte allies. He claims Go is, quote, part of the country's problems. Past 2 in the afternoon, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque filed his COC as a substitute candidate as senator under the People's Reform Party. And barely half an hour before the 5 p.m. deadline, Federalismo ng Dugong Dakilang Samahan Senate aspirant Mona Lisa Visorde pulled out her candidacy, while lawyer Melchor Aranas filed President Rodrigo Duterte's COC in her stead. This is a departure from President Duterte's plan over the weekend to vie for the vice presidency as Senator Go's running mate. With Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte running as VP and Father Rodrigo in the Senate race, there are now 2 Dutertes running for national posts, defeating Sara's original call that she will not run if her father is running. Meanwhile, PDDS Vice Presidential bet Benedicto Jose has pulled out of the race, but the party refused to confirm if the plan was to adopt Mayor Sara as their 2022 candidate. In sum, there were 19 substitutions from October 9 to November 15th and a handful of party lists switching nominees. Back to you, Pia.
Melissa, after today, what is next? Can candidates can no longer withdraw from the race, or can they?
Peer withdrawal is still an option for any candidate between now until the May 9 election day, but they can no longer be replaced by any of their allies. It's going to be just a one-way deal, according to COMELEC spokesman James Jimenez. In this case, a candidate can only be substituted if he dies between now and the May 9 election day, or he gets disqualified. And they can only be replaced by anyone who shares the same surname, so that new candidate will get the votes that will be cast in the ballot if the change or if the substitution because of death or disqualification is successful. Pia?
Melissa Lopez there reporting. Malacanang says there is no bad blood between President Rodrigo Duterte and his daughter, Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte. That's despite the chief executive expressing his dismay over the political plans of his daughter. He questioned Sara's vice presidential bid after having consistently topped surveys of presidential preferences. The palace says the two have not yet spoken to each other as of Monday morning.
Wala naman pong problema sa samahan siguro na mag-ama, no? Ang sinabi lang ni Presidente, hindi nagkonsulta si Mayor Sara sa kanyang mga political plans, pero medyo siyempre nagtatampo dahil hindi nga siya nakonsulta. Pero alam niyo po, si Mayor Sara, paboritong anak po yan ng ating Presidente. Sabihin na lang natin na gaya ng kahit anong relasyong pamilya, minsan may tagpuhan, pero wala pong kaduda-duda, nagmamahalan po mag-ama.
On Saturday, Sara Duterte filed her certificate of candidacy for vice president under her new political party, Lakas CMD. That same day, the Partido Federal ng Pilipinas announced it would be adopting the younger Duterte as the running mate of presidential aspirant Bongbong Marcos. Sara has yet to issue a statement on whether she would be accepting the endorsement. Lakas CMD, for its part, said it is in the process of formalizing the adoption of a standard bearer for the Davao City Mayor. The substitution of aspirants also took place in Biliran Province. Biliran Governor Roger Espina and his son, Naval Town Mayor Gerard Espina, both withdrew their re-election bids. Governor Espina explains he now wants to retire from politics, so his son will replace him instead. The gubernatorial position in the province is now a two-way fight between Gerard Espina, who is running under the Nacionalista Party, and Edgardo Ambe, who is running under PROMDI. Gerard's sister, Gretchen, meanwhile, withdrew her COC for municipal councillor to substitute for him. She's running unopposed for Naval Mayor. The Espinas have dominated the political arena in Biliran Province for more than 25 years since it became independent from Leyte Province. After almost 2 years, the country resumes limited face-to-face classes today in areas tagged as low risk for COVID-19. 100 public schools joined the pilot study, while 20 private schools will reopen physical classes on November 22nd. Only students from kinder, grades 1 to 3, and senior high school are allowed to participate. The Education Department says they can spend 3 to 5 hours inside the classroom with only about 12 to 15 students. Teachers and non-teaching personnel have also to be fully vaccinated. Over 5,200 students from the initial 100 public schools are expected to join the pilot run. More schools are set to be included following the president's go signal to increase the number of participants. In Oslob town in Cebu province, 71 senior high school students joined the limited in-person classes. Kanyang Marcelo Luna National High School principal Michael Angelo Magalso says there were no problems except that some of them were late for their classes, which started at 7:30 in the morning. The same set of students will again report to school on Thursday. A different group will attend classes every Tuesday and Friday, while Wednesdays are for disinfection. 7 other institutions took part in the pilot study, including 3 high schools and 4 elementary schools. Day 1 of the pilot face-to-face classes also went smoothly in Palo town in Leyte, where a school reopened exclusively to students with special needs. Let's get the details from our Tacloban-based correspondent, Wilmark Amazona.
A school for children with special needs in Leyte province successfully began the pilot in-person class with 2 learners. Palo Central School opens its doors to 2 children with autism out of 11 enrollees. School authorities require the parent or guardian to sign a health declaration form before the learner enters the classroom. After temperature check, the parent or guardian will have to sign the logbook. Authorities designate areas to enter and exit the classroom and school campus to observe physical distancing and minimize interaction. Other schools hold face-to-face classes that last for 4 hours, but in Palawan Central, learners stay in class for only an hour. The teacher is in protective suit and has a 15-minute interval to change protective gear, clean the classroom, and prepare for the next class. Because of the children with special needs, school authorities prohibit interaction among visitors with the learners, parents, or guardians, and the teachers. The media can take video and photos, but from a number of meters away from the classroom, and faces of learners should not be shown. DepEd Division Information Officer Karen Baril says day 1 of the in-person class was successful. Education officials hope other learners will be able to return to classrooms sooner than later. 2 other schools in Leyte are participating in pilot face-to-face classes. Dolo Elementary School with 13 learners from the Badjak community and Bato Central School with 7 learners for the Arabic language and Islamic values education. Back to you, Tia.
Wilmark Amazonada reporting from Tacloban. Meantime, the DepEd draws flack after photographs from Longos Elementary School in Pangasinan showed security forces carrying long firearms while inspecting classrooms. It explains police officers were part of the security detail of a local official who visited the institution. The DepEd says field officials and school administrators should make sure this will not happen again, noting a department order that schools must be free from the presence of armed government personnel. In Zambales, 3 out of 10 schools were forced to postpone the reopening of limited physical classes. Among these, the San Marcelino National High School and Baliwet Elementary School, where some teachers tested positive for COVID-19 through antigen testing. Banawan Elementary School in San Felipe Town also deferred its reopening as teachers await the results of their tests. Antigen testing is required for personnel participating in the pilot run. Now, coming up on Newsnight, the Senate security team arrests 2 executives of the controversial Farmally Corporation amid an attempt to escape the country. But the palace claims it was the executive branch that stopped them from leaving. And Metro Manila mayors may soon bar minors inside malls again after a 2-year-old reportedly caught COVID-19. Details when we come back. Welcome back to Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. Travel restrictions for minors in Metro Manila are again on the table. Mayors are set to decide on the matter after a toddler supposedly caught COVID-19 after visiting a mall. Carolyn Bonkin has more.
After months of staying indoors, these toddlers were brought by their mothers to the mall, but on a weekday when it's not too crowded.
Normally kapag weekdays wala naman tao, and it's outdoor naman din. Safety protocols pa din, always bring alcohol and wipes.
Less crowded area. Tapos, you have to check kung ano yung natatouch na mga bagay.
Mas okay na yung nakakalabas sila kasi madaming nawawala talaga na sa kanila, matututunan sa labas, ganun.
The health department is allowing minors to go out under alert level 2 for their mental and physical health.
Magkaroon ng exposure sa sun, maka-interact sa ibang bata, makapag-exercise, makalabas-labas outside of their homes.
But on Friday, a 2-year-old reportedly got COVID-19 3 days after a mall visit. The health department calls this an isolated incident, but the Metro Manila Council is not taking a chance. City health officers in Metro Manila, pediatricians, and the DOH NCR director are meeting on Tuesday to discuss the possible reimposition of travel restriction on minors, specifically children under 5. They're not required to wear a face mask in public due to risk of suffocation.
Specifically for crowded spaces, for closed spaces like malls, will they still be allowed or disallowed na? No, at what age? Will it be too risky for these babies, for these infants? So probably government can step in. That's why we're going to review, with the help of doctors at that.
Metro Manila mayors will then decide based on their recommendation. But for the health department, it's not really about restricting minors to go out, but for adults to follow health protocols and for parents to be mindful of the risk.
Pag nakita na ho natin na masikip yung mga lugar, huwag muna po natin dadalhin ang ating mga kabataan dyan.
She also says businesses should take responsibility, like keeping their establishment capacity in check. Some restaurants and malls only allow minors inside when their adult companions are fully vaccinated. Caroline Bongkin, CNN Philippines.
Local governments as well as private and state healthcare facilities can now directly buy investigational COVID-19 drugs. These are experimental drugs being tested for their safety and efficacy against the virus, but must have an emergency use authorization or EUA. The Health Department revised previous guidelines which only allow the procurement of investigational medicine through the agency. An administrative order signed by Health Secretary Francisco Duque states the drug should be reviewed by COVID-19 living recommendations experts and endorsed by the Health Technology Assessment Council.
So for us to be able to facilitate the process and hindi tayo magkaroon ng bottleneck, hindi na kailangang DOH pa ang bumili tapos magpapa-allocate pa sa lahat ng ospital para mas mabilis at magamit agad ng ating mga kababayang nangangailangan ng mga ganitong gamot.
The Health Department set the price cap for the drugs at maximum wholesale price. Beginning today, shopping malls will be open up to 11 p.m. to give more people time there. This is part of efforts to manage traffic ahead of the holiday season shopping rush, especially amid the pandemic. Chrissy Di Matulak reports.
Nico is a cashier in a shopping mall stall. He says he welcomes longer mall hours during the holiday season because this would mean more sales and overtime pay for the workers.
Yung sale namin naging okay na rin. Bumalik na rin po yung dating sales namin. Nagkabenta na rin kami.
Customers are also looking forward to longer shopping hours as they prepare for the season of gift giving.
So, syempre masaya, but you know, we have to also consider yung buying capacity ng tao. But masaya naman, at least more time to go around.
As a family, we also want to be very protective of our children, take all the right precautions. But the fact that the mall hours are extended, I think, at least for families, it really helps us.
Malls are now open until 11 p.m. on weekdays, so there will be less rush among shoppers and traffic may be managed better. Sales are limited on weekends. Mall operators vow to strictly carry out safety protocols as more people are outside under Alert Level 2.
We have dedicated, we call them safety ambassadors. So round the clock, umiikot sila loob at labas ng malls.
Aside from adjusting mall hours, the MMDA is also coordinating with the Transportation Department to deploy more public utility vehicles for the expected volume of commuters this Christmas season. Chrissy Di Matulak, CNN Philippines.
The Senate security team arrests two executives of controversial government supplier Pharmally Pharmaceutical in Davao City just as they were about to fly out to Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. Senate personnel apprehended Mohit and Twinkle Dargani while on board a chartered plane at the Davao International Airport on Sunday. Mohit tried to run back to the plane but was caught after a short chase. The palace claims it was the executive branch that prevented the siblings from fleeing the country. Former presidential spokesperson Harry Roque claims that the airport where the Darganis were arrested was, quote, under the authority of the executive branch. But Blue Ribbon Committee Chairman Richard Gordon says the panel staff received a tip from concerned citizens on the Darganis' whereabouts and worked quietly with Senate security. The Darganis are now detained at the Senate and were subjected to a medical checkup this morning. Gordon says they will remain detained until they supposedly tell the truth about Pharmally's alleged anomalous deals with the government. They were cited in contempt last month for refusing to submit documents subpoenaed by senators. Meantime, the security team is still tracking down former procurement service head Lloyd Christopher Lau, who was also linked to the alleged anomalous deals. He was ordered arrested for skipping Senate hearings. The Senate Sergeant at Arms says they went to Lau's known addresses in Quezon City, Cebu, and Davao, but he was not there. Still ahead on Newsnight, from whirlwind tours to big wins, we have the latest on your favorite Korean pop groups, and a popular Hollywood actress teams up with singer Taylor Swift for her directorial debut. More when we return. Welcome back to CNN Philippines. As travel restrictions ease around the world, some K-pop stars are getting ready to grace the global stage again. Girl group Twice announced its fourth world tour titled 3. The first concert is set for Christmas Eve in Seoul, South Korea. Other shows are slated for U.S. locations. The words "and more" from the teaser poster trended on Twitter as fans speculated which countries would be included in the tour. More live K-pop shows are coming, this time from boy group NCT 127. Its second world tour, Neo City Seoul, The Link, kicks off December 17th. For fans outside Korea, the third show will be broadcast through the Beyond Live streaming service. Other Korean musicians are also making Twitter trends, this time for sweeping prizes at the MTV Europe Music Awards. BTS won in all categories it was nominated for. It snatched 4 trophies, including Best Group and Best Pop. Ed Sheeran was another big winner, nabbing Best Artist and Best Song for Bad Habits. This year marks the award show's return to an in-person affair since last year's virtual event. It welcomed performances at Budapest, Hungary from stars like Sheeran and rapper Saweetie. The night also saw great support for LGBTQ rights, with the first MTV EMA Generation Change Award going to 5 advocates for gender equality. Well, there's more in store for Swifties, and this one involves an exciting collaboration. Just 3 days after releasing the re-recordings of her album Red, Taylor Swift is dropping a music video for I Bet You Think About Me. Swift's friend, actress Blake Lively, is making her directorial debut with the project. That premieres at 11 p.m. tonight. This will be Swift's second music video in 3 days. The short film for the 10-minute version of All Too Well came out over the weekend. Fans rushed to watch the heartbreaking video written and directed by the singer herself. It now has over 27 million views on YouTube and counting. A young actress also stealing the spotlight as she earns praises from a famous co-star on the big screen. CNN's David Daniel tells us more on the Hollywood Minute.
Look at you. Oh, he's so cute and so tiny.
And so red.
I love that he's red.
Darby Camp forges a big screen bond with a puppy who's not tiny for long in Clifford the Big Red Dog. The 14-year-old actress impressed her grown-up co-stars, including comedy legend John Cleese.
You can talk to her about what's happening in the scene, and it's like talking to someone who's 30 years of age and been doing it half their life.
Our first taste of Dina Carter was her album Did I Shave My Legs for This, featuring Strawberry Wine and other hits. The country singer is out with a 25th anniversary reissue of the much-loved album.
It's just had this timeless thing about it, and I'm just so grateful. It doesn't happen for a lot of artists to have an album, especially my debut record, that had hits on it and it's still around, and people, it's like a staple for a lot of people, and it's become a generational thing from parents to kids and grandkids. It's been really special.
It's funny how those memories they last like strawberry wine.
In Hollywood, I'm David Daniel.
We have 40 more days before Christmas, and that is it for tonight. Join me again on News.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
Radio Philippines Network Incorporated, DXPO. Presence sa inyong usos sa dalan sa inyong radyo. RPO RTN DXKO, ang Radyo Ronda dili sa Dagdagan sa Cagayan de Oro. Sidyahan na may galaon sa katawan, andam na serbisyo sa tanan. Ang RTN DXKO Radyo Ronda sakop sa KBP, kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
An estimated 1 million Filipinos have tuberculosis. It's a serious and infectious disease that mainly affects the lungs. But TB can also affect any part of the body, including your abdomen, your lymph nodes, your spine, as well as your nervous system. The bacteria that causes tuberculosis are spread from person to person through tiny droplets released into the air via coughs or sneezes. But it can be cured if treated with the right antibiotics. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez. You're watching MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. We're here to build a healthier future for you. August is National Tuberculosis Month. And to help us understand the disease better, let's welcome our guests. We have Dr. Jubert Benedicto. He's a pulmonologist and the head of the TB-related services at the Lung Center of the Philippines and the Philippine College of Chest Physicians. We also have Dr. Maria Tarcela Glaire. She's an infectious disease specialist and the training officer at the Makati Medical Center. Now, about 1 million Filipinos have active tuberculosis, and this is the third highest prevalence in the world. It's highly curable, but it causes the most deaths annually out of all infectious diseases in our country. And there are certain factors that can increase your risk of infection. Now, Dr. Maricel, could you tell us why is TB so prevalent here in the Philippines?
TB is really prevalent in the Philippines. In fact, tayo nga yung pang-apat sa buong mundo, no, na pinakamadaming TB in the world. Ngayon, bakit siya marami? Kasi hindi pa effective yung control ng TB. Una, dahil hindi kaagad nagpapagamot yung mga tao, hindi kaagad nagpapakonsulta. So sa bawat araw na hindi nagpapakonsulta yung isang tao na may TB, ay nakakahawa siya ng 10 tao.
Ano ba yung mga risk factors that may contribute sa isang taong magkaroon ng TB?
Sila yung mga taong mababa yung immune system, yung mga taong may HIV, yung mga taong may comorbidities na diabetes, na bumababa ang immune system, yung mga may cancer kasi binibigyan sila ng gamot pang pababa ng immune system, yung may mga nakatransplant, at saka yung may mga sakit sa baga, katulad ng mga naninigarilyo.
A healthy immune system which usually fights off the bacteria caused by TB, but there are certain conditions that might make you unable to fend off the disease. Now, Dr. Maricel, pag-usapan po natin yon a little bit. You mentioned some of the diseases na pwedeng mag-promote ng active TB sa isang tao. Bakit kaya? Umpisahan natin first with those with HIV. Bakit kaya nagkakaroon ng mas madaling magkaroon ng TB ang mga may HIV?
Yung mga taong may HIV, yung virus na yun, what it does is, pinapatay niya, tumitira siya sa mga ating immune system na yung cells na lumalaban sa mga diseases. Ang tawag doon yung CD4 cells. Doon tumitira yung HIV, tapos pinapatay niya itong mga to. After a certain period, bumababa masyado yung CD4, kaya yung mga regular na diseases, mga regular na infection, na hindi naman nakaka-apekto dun sa normal na tao, ay mas madali silang maapekto. So, ang tawag natin dito sa kanila, immunocompromised.
Babies and young children also have a high risk of getting TB because their immune systems aren't fully formed as well. Dr. Maricel, who are the most susceptible ba to tuberculosis?
Yung mga batang less than 5 years old, no? They're at most risk of getting TB. At syempre, doon lang sila mahahawa sa mga kasama nila sa bahay. Usually, so kung merong adult na may TB sa bahay, sila yung most vulnerable, yung mga batang less than 5 years old.
Having a TB infection doesn't always mean that you will get symptoms or get sick. There are generally two forms of the disease. That's your latent TB and your active TB. Now, in latent TB, the TB bacteria can live in your body without actually giving you symptoms or even making you sick. Now, active TB, on the other hand, is where TB becomes more prevalent in your body, causing more symptoms to be seen because now your immune system is compromised and the bacteria continues to grow. Now I'll go kay Dr. Joubert naman. We'd like to further discuss that difference between a person with latent TB and active TB. Paano ba natin ma-explain to?
It has something to do with the pathogenesis of TB. So pag ikaw ay may latent TB or TB infection, wala ka pa hong nararamdaman, normal pa ang pakiramdam mo. Pag in-x-ray ka, more often than not, normal ang x-ray mo. Anong nangyayari pag nagkaroon ng TB disease? Kung may hit ang immune system natin, ang mangyayari po, magiging sluggish yung cellular immune system natin, hindi niya kakayanin ihinto yung TB bacilli. So ano nangyayari? Magre-wreak havoc na ngayon yung TB bacilli. Yan na ngayon, nakikita natin yung mga pasyenteng may simptomas na, ubo ng ubo, may lagnat or sinat, nangangayayat. Pag in-x-ray mo, Freddy, may makikita ka ng changes sa x-ray. Yan na yung active TB.
What if they have latent TB na hindi nila alam? Is this something that needs to be addressed? Should they be screened for TB? Does latent TB need to be treated if spotted?
So sa ngayon, meron po tayong pang-screen para po sa latent TB. Yun po yung isang blood test, interferon gamma release assay or IGRA, para po makita positive lang or negative. Now, ang atin pong recommendation sa ngayon, yung mga taong merong risk factor for possible TB, yung mga tinamaan ng immune system, TB infection pa lang kayo, pwede na po nating gamutin. Anong ginagawa po ng gamot? Ipe-prevent niya yung infection turning to an active disease. Kasi nga po, ang premise is, hindi na nga po maganda ang inyong immune system. So, tinutulungan po kayo ng gamot.
Dr. Maricel, ano yung ibig sabihin ng primary complex? I'm sure a lot of people have heard this before pagdating sa anak nila. Could you explain this to our viewers, please?
Ang primary complex, ito yung tawag sa unang active TB infection, no? Siyempre, dahil yung bata, yung usually unang nagkakaroon ng first active TB infection, sila yung usual na tinatawag na merong primary complex.
Without treatment, tuberculosis can be fatal. When we return, we'll talk about the complications of TB. MedTalk Health Talk is your connection to healthcare, so keep it here on CNN Philippines. Welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk. Our topic for today, tuberculosis. If TB spreads throughout the body, the infection can cause problems with the cardiopulmonary system as well as your metabolic functions. Now, this disease can be fatal without treatment. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and we're together in health. Now, let's talk about diabetes naman. How is it that diabetic people are at risk of having active TB?
So, yung mga may diabetes, somehow, yung mga white cells nila, so sa ating immune system mo, no, makikita nyo yung lumalaban sa sa mga bacteria is na yung mga white cells, no. Yung mga diabetic na lalo na yung hindi controlled yung diabetes nila, hindi ganun ka-functional yung kanilang white cells. Kasi yung sugar, yung mataas na sugar, somehow sinisira niya yung mga wall ng white cells kaya hindi siya ganun ka ayos ang function.
The medications for diabetes conflict with if they have active TB, would it conflict with the antibiotics needed to treat the TB?
Karamihan naman hindi, no? Karamihan naman hindi nagko-conflict. Yung pinaka-issue lang naman sa TB treatment ay yung rifampicin. Karamihan siya yung maraming nagkukontra sa ibang mga gamot, no? Pero sa diabetes treatment, hindi naman.
Let's talk about some of the symptoms that people might feel when they have active TB, because a lot of people may think about tuberculosis. The first thing that comes into their mind is umuubo or naglalabas ng dugo sa kanilang ubo. But this is actually during the late stage na ng tuberculosis, isn't it, Dr. Joubert?
Ang nararamdaman lang po ng pasyente, parang wala siyang energy. Nanghihina, tapos minsan may pasinat-sinat po. Yan po yung nakikita po natin. Tapos tama ka, nawawalan silang ganang kumain, nangangayayat. Later na po siguro yung ubo, lalo na yung persistent na cough. Pag nagdura ka po ng ubo, ng plema, pag umubo ka at may bahid ng dugo, maaring tama ka, late na po yan. So in which case po, dun pa lang po earlier on, non-specific po yung symptoms. I-encourage po talaga namin na magpakonsulta na po kayo.
Okay. Now, Dr. Joubert, then I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this have tried to apply for employment at one point or another, and part of that standard employment procedure, bukod sa NBI clearance, is a chest x-ray. Ngayon, yung chest x-ray, maraming makikita dito, but primarily, they look at the lungs, actually to look for kung itong tao ay nagkaroon ng TB or hindi. Is this the best way really to spot a TB infection in someone, a chest x-ray, or are there other more definitive tests?
Napakita kasi sa National Prevalence Survey natin na 98% ang nasiscreen ng x-ray for possible TB. Kaya po talaga nire-recommend pa rin namin yung x-ray as a screening tool. Pero ang ibig po sabihin ng screening tool, dapat yung doktor tinitake into consideration niya yung x-ray, tatanungin niya yung pasyente, nagka-TB ka na ba dati o nagka-spot sa baga, ginamot ka na ba dati sa TB, titignan niya yung pasyente mismo in terms sa mga nararamdaman kung meron, tsaka yung PE findings niya.
People can also see TB in other parts of the body. Pwedeng makita sa kulani, pwedeng makita sa lalamunan, pwedeng makita rin sa mechan. How common is it for TB to be found in other places aside from the lungs, Dr. Maricel?
So ito, hindi siya ganun ka-common. If you look at our data, less than 1% ng TB na reported ay extrapulmonary TB. Ang tawag doon TB outside of the lungs ay extrapulmonary TB. So hindi siya ganun ka-common, pero nakikita natin siya madalas lalo na sa ospital at lalo na dun sa mga taong mababa ang immune system. This is very common sa mga taong may HIV. Pero yung mga taong may extrapulmonary TB, hindi ito sila nakakahawa kung wala sila sa lungs.
Now, Dr. Joubert, pag-usapan naman natin yung mga komplikasyon ng TB na hindi ginamot. Ano ang nangyayari sa katawan ng tao kapag hindi nagamot, hindi naagapan ang TB?
Primarily, yung ating baga ang tatamaan kasi nga yan ang primary organ na naapektuhan ng TB. So ang isang pasyenteng hindi nagamot yung TB or napabayaan, so madalas ito po yung nakikita nating nabubutas yung baga or may cavity formation. So nakikita rin po natin na hindi po magiging maganda ang paghilom ng baga niya. So ito po yung naglilitid ng matindi o yung tinatawag nating mga fibrotic diseases. Yung ating pong daanan ng hangin, instead po na maging smooth yan, pag naghilom, nagiging uka-uka or bako-bako. Yan po yung tinatawag nating bronchiectasis. Kaya po yung pasyenteng napabayaan yung TB, talagang pangmatagalan po yung hingal niya, hindi po mawawala yung ubo. At ito yung mga pasyenteng nagsasabing, Doc, ang tagal na, ba't yung plema ko parating may dugo?
Kapag naggamot ang tao, yung damage ba sa lungs pwedeng bumalik sa dati? Parang 100% healed na ba ang lungs kapag naggamot?
Wala pong pangako na 100% siya. So madalas ang sasabihin ko po sa mga pasyente parang rule of 3. 1/3 of the time, maari pong gaganda yan. Depende po sa extent na damage. 1/3 of the time, hindi siya gaganda, hindi siya papangit, status quo lang tayo. Pero 1/3 of the time, dahil nga medyo napabayaan, malaki na ang damage sa lungs, talagang makakaramdam ka ng long-term complications niya. So, hindi po 100% na masasabing porket nagamutan ka ng tama ay babalik sa normal yung baga.
It's very important that we know how to keep our loved ones safe from getting TB. More on this when we come back. Your health is our mission. You're watching MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. Treatment for TB usually involves taking antibiotics for several months. And while TB is a serious condition, when left untreated, deaths are rare if treatment is fully completed. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and you're watching MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines, where your care always comes first. People with latent TB don't have symptoms and can't spread the infection to others. However, the bacteria can become active, which is why this should be treated to prevent it from developing into TB disease. Dr. Joubert, pag-usapan natin, earlier we mentioned how latent TB, iba yung gamutan nito, no, from active TB. Paano ba ginagamot ang latent TB?
Ang latent TB po, ang intention po natin is yung infection, hindi siya mag-turn to an active disease. So usually po, ito yung mga available sa TB center natin, yung isoniazid na iniinom natin once a day for 6 months. Again, for latent TB yan. Meron din pong mga combination ng gamot, rifampicin plus isoniazid, once a day for 3 months. Or yung kung bagong gamot, pag magiging available na po dito sa Pilipinas, I think next year magiging available na sa isoniazid plus rifampicin once a week. So ang ganda nito, once a week lang for 3 months. Iba po ang gamutan pag active TB disease na. Pag active TB disease na, ito po yung 6 months namang gamutan. Again, available po yan sa ating mga TB center. Ito po yung 2 months ng 4 drugs to be followed by 4 months of 2 drugs. So yung mga kombinasyon po yan ng gamot, yan po ay available sa health centers natin.
Ang gamutan ng TB, ng active TB, takes at least 6 months. Napaka-importante ito at hindi maputol. Tuloy-tuloy dapat ang inom nito kasi kapag naputol ito, there is a chance na maging resistant ang isang tao with that treatment. So magiging drug-resistant or multi-drug resistant TB na ito. I'd like to ask Dr. Maricel, kapag umabot ang tao sa multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, gaano kahirap i-treat naman ito?
Multi-drug resistant TB, so yung mga gamot natin sa TB, para malaman natin, 4 na klase yung sinasabi ni Dr. Joubert. 4 na antibiotics na dapat sabay-sabay. Kasi mahirap magamot ang TB, medyo matigas ang ulo niya. So, kailangan 4 kaagad ang ibigay na antibiotic.
Ang gamutan ba for 6 months, dapat ba ina-isolate din sila sa mga mahal nila? Are they infectious the entire time of treatment?
So, pag naggagamot ka, yun ang maganda sa TB, no? Hindi ka nakakahawa kung ikaw ay nagagamot. Kaya ang best infection control sa TB ay maggamot ka, magpakonsulta ka at maggamot ka na. Kasi pagkatapos ng 2 linggo, kung ikaw ay yung drug-susceptible TB o simpleng TB, ay pwede ka nang hindi nakakahawa.
Now, as with many infectious and deadly diseases, vaccinations can help. The Bacillus-Calmette-Guerin or BCG vaccine offers protection against tuberculosis. It's often given to infants and small children in countries where TB is more common, such as the Philippines, and it protects children from getting severe forms of TB disease. Dr. Maricel, how can one avail of this vaccine and sino ba yung mga qualified para dito?
Yung vaccination for TB, no, sa mga bata pa lang. Yung mga bagong sinilang na bata, ang tawag doon BCG vaccine, no? Dito sa Pilipinas dahil nga napakataas ng ating prevalence ng TB, required yon sa lahat ng bata na pagkapanganak ay bibigyan na sila ng BCG vaccine. The BCG vaccine is most effective to prevent yung severe TB disease sa mga bata.
And meron ba side effects ang BCG vaccine sa mga bata?
Madalas kasi ang side effect ng mga BCG na bakuna ay yung mga local lang, no? So yung mga namamaga or namumula yung tinurukan or sometimes syempre masakit, yun yung mas common side effect niya. So in general, kayang-kaya po matolerate yung BCG vaccine.
And with that, I'd like to thank pulmonologist Dr. Joubert Benedicto and infectious disease specialist Dr. Maria Tarcel Agler for joining us and sharing your knowledge with regards to tuberculosis. An active TB infection is potentially life-threatening if the person doesn't receive proper treatment. However, most cases are highly treatable if it's detected early. We want to be your partner for a lifetime of good health. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this has been MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines.
Niining sa pandemya, importante ang paggamit ug paghatod sa hustong impormasyon. Ang pagpakalap sa peking balita o fake news may tungod sa mga bakuna batok sa COVID-19 naghatod sa kahadlok ug pagduda. Tungod niini, padayon nga gipahinumduman ang publiko nga ang tanang mga bakuna epektibo ug luwas nga pangdepensa batok COVID-19. Ang mga bakuna sa COVID-19 miagi kini sa masubsob nga pagtuon ug pagsusi sa mga eksperto. Dili kita basta-basta mutuo sa mga hulungihong lamang. Inay, mukuha sa mga impormasyon gikan sa kasaligan o beripikadong tinubdan. Ang taong may tiwala sa agham, makakamit ang kaligtasang inaasam. Usa ka pahinumdom gikan sa DOH, KBP